Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. History Through the Eyes of a Millennial with Chris Pacifici. Welcome back, of course, to your show, Chris.
Thank you.
Get good responses. You posting shows on Facebook.
Yes.
And that's great. And that's awesome because bear in mind, Facebook doesn't allow just audio files. They're not conducive to Facebook. So having images of you up there and the name of the show always helps.
Yes.
And that's why, we do that because Facebook is so important. Mm-hmm. Paul McCartney. Now, of course, as we all know, Chris Pacifici is, you're 27 years old.
Yes.
Paul McCartney, obviously, how old is he? He was born in 1942.
42.
Do the math. How old is he now?
Gotta be 78, 79 years old.
So he's going to be hitting 80 years old.
Yes.
And again, the reason why Chris, like so many people your age and younger for that matter, adapt to the 20th century pop culture, like the Beatles, and why not, is because your parents were probably big Beatles fans.
Oh my God, were they ever? They went and saw Paul McCartney twice. They went and saw him in Toronto in 1993, and then they saw him at Madison Square Garden in 2000.
I saw him just 4 years ago at the Carrier Dome, and it was just fantastic. It really was. To think, here it is, we're in this huge stadium, but just the thought that there's a Beatle here, and it's, of course, the most famous Beatle in my opinion.
God.
Paul McCartney's in the same room as I was.
Yes.
And he was very humble, and at one point he actually looked at the crowd, he just studied it from left, middle to right, and just being overwhelmed by it in a very humble way, and he just wanted to take it in, which is great.
Yeah, I know.
So here's the thing, you ask former President Bill Clinton, someone asked him who, just off the cuff, and this was one of those things, he was having, a bunch of reporters in the room, and, they were asking a lot of important questions, as you might imagine. So, but one said, hey, who's your favorite Beatle? And Clinton didn't answer it right away. He was busy, he was walking away. He just turned around and says, Paul, and then he walked out the door. Yeah. How many people say that, in your opinion?
I think a lot of people. I think if you're a truly dedicated fan of the Beatles, as me and my family is, because he was worshipped in my household. It started with my mom would tell me stories of how her and my aunt such huge Beatles fans. She told me how my aunt watched them on the Ed Sullivan Show, their first appearance in America.
Amazing.
On the Ed Sullivan Show. I know, you could barely hear them speak over the girls screaming. Every time their name was mentioned, the girls would start freaking out. Like,
they couldn't hear the music.
No. And also, I think during their Dodger Stadium tour, they could barely hear themselves over the girls screaming.
And not to mention when they played at Shea Stadium, it was a year or so later, or maybe the same year they came down. No, because that was in February. But anyway, a year or so later, they did Shea Stadium. They said it was the worst sounding concert ever, and no one gave a shit.
No, and they had to be taken like by a special bus to and from the stage. Yeah, right. Because they would get mobbed.
Yeah, right.
They did it.
And thousands of fans, and they were reckless. And you saw them going in and out of hotels.
Yes.
Of course, their movies depicted that. Whereas, and they have, of course, the obligatory old guy, the bald guy with the glasses, and he was always questioning them. He was someone's grandfather, whatever.
Yeah.
But they would go in and out of cabs, running into hotels. But that's the way it was.
Yes.
And the British invasion, of course, they had a lot of other bands on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yes.
I thought the girls got a little carried away. They would yell and scream for the animals. Or stop it. Just enough is enough.
It's like, we're trying to listen.
You're trying to listen. So, okay, here's my, first of all, Paul's my favorite.
Yes.
But if you come right down to it, and again, all four are great.
Yes.
Rest his soul, of course, George Harrison, John Lennon getting shot in 1980, which is awful. But I have noticed that if guys have a tendency to like John Lennon more than Paul McCartney, and of course, women love Paul McCartney.
He is. I think he is a sex symbol.
Yeah, and he's good looking now.
Yes, he is. I think he's still good looking. Even he's close to 80, he's still got it.
He doesn't have his voice. I mean, as much because you lose the quality of your voice, but he still gets those high notes. And he was singing a Junior's Farm.
Yes.
And the other aspect that I noticed, because you get into lyrics and you go online lyrics.com and you look at a Paul McCartney song, or for that matter a Beatles song, and it's funny. Have you ever really looked at lyrics before in a pop song or like a Beatles song?
Not really. No, I never truly looked.
I don't either. And I've always been again. Here's my problem. I don't know the words to any songs. I just know the melodies. Right. It doesn't matter to me because it's melody, it's music, and I love that. But a lot of times I was just like, I look at the lyrics and I looked up Junior's Farm, great song, and he sang that, and we'll get to that in a bit. He was with the Wings, Paul McCartney and Wings.
Yeah.
And it's just like the lyrics don't make any sense. It's like you have a Pence. What about this? And we're down at the farm. charm. But again, at the end of the day, it's how it comes across as a melody.
It is. I remember as a kid, my mom used to play Yellow Submarine in the car all the time. I didn't listen to. I just like the part where they said, "We all live in a yellow submarine."
Right. Of course, yeah. But again, did you know the whole story behind it and the whole album cover and all the? I like the later stuff that the Beatles did, and Yellow Submarine wasn't my favorite. To me, I just thought the early stuff was their best, but all of it, the greatest band of all time.
Yes.
Now, of course, Paul McCartney, born in 1942 in Liverpool, and I'm assuming all four Beatles were born in Liverpool. They always talk about Liverpool.
They were all born to working class parents. They first met in 1967. Their first album was Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh no, they met before that. 1960s. Did you say 67?
1960s.
60, yes, right. Yeah. Okay, in the early, because and George Harrison was only 17 years old when they put the band together.
Yes, they were all pups when they got, as my mom put it. They were all pups when they got together. Yeah, you ever seen? I loved the album work they did for Sgt. Pepper's.
Yes,
Sgt. Pepper.
Yes,
I love the album cover because it encompasses not just them their present day look, but also like these different, like they were in their music. They were using like different cultures. They went to India. They learned how to play the sitar in India. You know, they had like photo pictures of them from their younger years, and also like famous movie like Marilyn Monroe,
right,
and everyone.
They were cut out figures too.
They were, and it was just so beautifully done. I thought so masterfully done.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they have pictures in the garden setting at the base of the photograph.
Yes.
They have pictures of the Rolling Stones.
Really?
Yeah, I think I know Mick Jagger's obviously one of them, and they had a rivalry, of course.
Yes, and I should also mention the late actor Phil Hartman. He used to design album covers for bands.
You're right. Good point. But he didn't do it for the Beatles, did he? Or
no, not for the Beatles.
He was a very talented guy.
Yes, he was.
That was a tragic incident where his wife was jealous of his success, and they were having problems. He was going to move on, and I guess another girlfriend, whichever.
Yeah.
And she was on drugs, and she shot him, and then she took her own life. All right. So McCartney, of course, like everybody, started off very humbly.
Yes.
It's funny because we're talking about Paul McCartney today here on the History Through the Eyes of a Millennial. And I just saw a picture the other day of the Beatles performing before they were the Beatles, like you said, in the early 60s, at some like high school, auditorium, and no one gave a shit. They were the Beatles on the stage, so they all started the same way.
Yes, they all started the same way. So, and it's kind of like I kind of like based it on like the plot for Bohemian Rhapsody about Queen.
Yeah,
how they started out like performing like in small clubs. Sure. And then a record producer heard them, and then signed them on, and then as time progressed on, they became this big stars, this big band.
So was Brian Epstein there from the beginning, essentially?
No, I think he became part of it later on.
Later on. So okay, so he's in the band. And what were they called? You might not know this. Were they called the Highlanders or something before they were the Beatles?
Yeah, there was another name before they were
the Countrymen.
The Countrymen,
the Countrymen. And does anyone know where the origins of the word the Beatles? Who came up with that? Something tells me that John Lennon probably came up with that.
John Lennon probably. That sounds like he was something he would come up with.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we can't really say there was a leader to that band. You really can't. I mean, okay, Brian Jones was the original leader of essentially of the Rolling Stones. He died in a pool of a drowning in, I believe, 1968 or 69. And then Mick Jagger, of course, takes over. And we know that.
Yes.
And we know that Tyler is the lead of Aerosmith. But we don't know who the lead of the Beatles were. It was all in your mind whether or not it was Paul or John. It definitely wasn't the other two.
No, but they were a good collaborating working team.
Oh, huge
songwriting team, Paul and John. They got into arguments. Paul was saying that they got into arguments. But yeah, they seemed to they were a brilliant writing duo. Someone said when Paul McCartney did a song with Kanye West and Rihanna, he liked the background beat for him. And this Dana Carvey was saying this. He's a famous comedian.
Yeah, sure.
And in his Netflix special, and someone said, I think Paul found his new John Lennon, Kanye West. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
Let's get one thing straight. Kanye West does have some good songs, but he will never be
a John Lennon.
There only ever will be one John Lennon. His talent pales in comparison to John's.
So he was emphatic about that.
Yeah, I mean, no, but I feel.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Did Paul say that, or you're speaking on Paul's
I'm speaking.
There
on
you
that,
go.
but also like the audience, saying it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's just like
that's the way. I mean, again, you look at. We talked about it before, not to get off the beaten path, but the king of pop, obviously from the '80s standpoint, was Michael Jackson, and yet just recently I saw that Drake has more hit songs than Michael Jackson. And you and I in the world knows that there's something very wrong with that. And that's the difference between today's music, rap, hip hop, and melody music and pop music from the yesteryear. There's no comparison none.
No.
You can't even put them in the same sentence.
no, one's more original than the other.
So, but you know what? They formed their solo careers. Paul McCartney, on the other hand, I know having a discussion with this years ago in the 70s. Well, George Harrison's off on his own. John Lennon's off on his own. Ringo's doing his own thing. Why does Paul McCartney need a band, Paul McCartney and Wings? Why do you think he did? I mean, that was a humble move in itself because he was, in fact, Paul McCartney.
I think he wanted more of the leadership. I think he wanted more of the leadership. I think
Or to have a band.
have a band again. Yeah, I think he enjoyed it. I think maybe being out on his own.
Yeah.
Maybe having his own team.
His own team, and then eventually he would have a solo career. So and I don't know the exact years, but I'm going to say, the Wings were like 72 through 77, if that.
No, they ended up disbanding in 81.
Really interesting. Yes. So it was a lot longer than I thought.
It was. They performed. They toured a lot. Paul's first wife, Linda Eastman, who was a well-known photographer. He taught her to play the keyboard. Not she was chastised for her vocals.
Yeah,
but she was part of their team.
Not as bad as Yoko, though.
No, no. I mean, I'm sure John had his reasons for loving Yoko.
She gave him the freedom to be John Lennon, essentially, but we won't get into that. So that's interesting. So in 1981, and then he gets a solo career. He does songs. He does a lot of songs that you can't forget. Some of them are very bubblegum type, coming up like a flower. He had that ability, just like so few people did. The Rolling Stones could adapt. The Who could adapt to a certain degree. And Paul McCartney, to this day, is still creating music.
Yes.
So, and it's not like he did his own version of rap. I'm not going to do a little hip hop. It was always his creation.
Yes.
And you knew every time that he got on the microphone, if it was a new song, oh, that's Paul McCartney.
Yeah, you could just tell. I mean, he just had that voice. It's like, it can get high and it can get low.
And if you ever notice, of course, we're doing this with audio, no one can sing like Paul McCartney.
No
one can impersonate Paul McCartney. You could do Mick Jagger, the whole gyration and so forth. You could try to do Pete Townsend. You can yell like Roger Daltrey, but nobody can sing like Paul McCartney, and and when he gets up to a microphone, and no one could see this obviously, but you could see me. He was always up here. I mean, I'm raising my hand above my head because he kind of talked down to, and it's like no one could do that.
No.
It's amazing how he performed.
It is, but everyone could do impersonations of him and John. Speaking voices, like Dana Carvey could, but you can never impersonate their singing.
Well, the one guy that tries to do it, and he does a very good job, is Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy would do that type of stuff. That's his forte.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's stuck in this muck and mire of politics. That's why he's suffering. Go ahead.
I would say, getting back to Michael Jackson.
He
bought all the rights to their music.
Yes. What was okay? That was in the 80s as well, if I'm not mistaken. Michael Jackson is making a boatload of money, and then he does the song, "The Girl Is." I'm a lover, not a fighter. The girl is mine. The great song, and he did another one with him too. A couple songs. With Michael Jackson, so they have a good relationship.
Yes.
And then, unbeknownst to Paul, he goes ahead and buys the library. What's that all about?
I know. It's. I think it was some kind of like
Power trip,
power, greed, something.
Yeah.
It was never because Dana Carvey was talking about this. It was never specified why Michael Jackson bought all their music. He also bought the rights to Happy Birthday.
I did not know that.
Like Happy Birthday, Happy Birthday. He bought the rights to that. So It's like restaurants couldn't keep singing it
without paying him.
I know that's just greedy.
That is crazy. So, but here's the thing, and we won't labor this, but he did die in in 2009. Michael Jackson did.
He did,
and he was essentially broke because he was owned by a management team. Did he wind up selling the library back to Paul McCartney?
It never said whether or not he did. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at 1.7 billion.
Wow.
But I should also add that same day,
Based on his library and everything.
yes,
Yeah, of music.
but the same day Michael Jackson died, Farrah Fawcett died that same day.
That's right.
And her death was overshadowed by Michael Jackson's death.
Right.
Because she'd been suffering from cancer for a long
For
time.
years, but it was, she had, So I remember, just as a footnote, I was in Jersey. I was in a Mercedes-Benz with a guy who owns a mattress company up here, Kevin Fear, and we were coming from Jersey in his Mercedes-Benz with no air conditioning. It was in June. It was hot, so I was driving fast with the windows down, and we heard throughout that afternoon that a man, allegedly Michael Jackson was taken in an ambulance. So we heard that, okay, we're going to find out an update. And sure enough, of course, he died that day.
At 50.
50 years old. Very, very sad. And of course, we found out more about his doctor, enabling him essentially with all those drugs and so forth. So a big, big loss. But you know what? Honestly, I'm going to say, this is a horrible thing to say. I think Michael Jackson died before he died because he looked odd. He was walking around oddly. He had that big trial. He just wasn't himself anymore.
It was weird. Everything, it felt weird. It just like when you hear about his story, it's just like,
yeah.
No wonder it's like, I won't say all of it, but it's just,
no, I know. And
I feel bad for him.
The creepiness of it, I don't think, and I'm going to go out on a limb on this, Macaulay Culkin, I think, could attest to this. Yes, the whole aspect of kids sleeping in his bedroom, I just think he was such a kid. He was such a what's the Captain Hook? What's
Peter Pan?
He was such a Peter Pan that I just think he liked being a child in his underwear, hanging out with kids. And I don't think anything sexual actually happened. Now, that's creepy enough. Don't get me wrong, Chris.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything beyond that happened. So, but it tarnished his career. And honestly, when he did that to Paul McCartney, I was upset. I didn't like that at all. You weren't born, of course.
No.
But I thought that was a douche move. And hopefully they resolved that because that was unfair. And of course, it screwed up their relationship from that point going forward.
It did. It did. It's just like, like you want a friend like Paul McCartney,
right?
Because
you don't want to get on his bad side. There's no reason for that.
Because I think he is a sensitive guy, Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Because I remember when he met his wife Linda.
Yeah.
He was kind of like depressed because the Beatles was coming to an end by that time. He was kind of sad. His relationship with Jane Asher had broken up a year earlier. Mm-hmm. And he said when he first saw her, like he was physically attracted to her.
Yeah,
she was different. She kind of like
American too.
She was American. She didn't like hang out with like the who's who because she came from money.
She didn't care.
No, she did her own thing.
Right.
She hung up with the cooks.
Yeah, right.
She didn't wear her hair all messy. She was bohemian.
Yeah, right.
Kind of bohemian bohemian lifestyle, and it's just cute. They got married. They had 4 kids together. Lived on a farm.
Awesome.
In England, And I remember Alec Baldwin told a story once of how he met his wife, Paul's wife, Linda, and she's like saying to Alec, go talk to him. That's all he wants. Just go talk to him. He wants to be treated like it normal.
Yeah. So in other words, Alec went and met up with Linda, and and Paul was there, and even Alec Baldwin at the time was a young actor, but she said you could talk to Paul because he's just like everybody else.
Yeah, because he wants to be treated like everyone else.
Right? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And there's also there's something very guarded about Europeans, particularly British people. And I see this with Paul. He doesn't let out a lot of things about himself. He doesn't sign autographs, and that's okay because if he did, he wouldn't have any time to himself because everyone wants his autograph.
Yeah.
But he's very blunt, is what I'm saying. I've seen him on talk shows, Letterman, Carson. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. You ever notice that just watching him in interviews over the years on tape or so?
I think I chalk it up to his British upbringing. I
think
the British don't really
it's a European thing. There's no doubt.
It is.
They don't mean to be rude. They are. They're very forward.
Yeah, they don't beat around the bush. They get straight to the point. That's why I like the kind of like not the like that they don't mess around.
Right. They don't.
They're serious people, but they're not so serious that they can't they can't be chill about it. Right. But still, that's what I find fascinating about the Europeans.
Self-taught musician.
Yes.
And all 4 of them could not, if I'm not mistaken, they couldn't read music. A lot of musicians, particularly from that era, just couldn't speak. They did it in the garage band or in their basement or somewhere, and they just learned how to play guitar. But he played many instruments.
He did play the guitar. He played. He could play the keyboard.
Right.
He could
Drums?
He could do the drums. He was just a multi-talented musician.
But he was not the lead. Harrison was the lead guitar, but he probably could have been the lead guitar if he wanted to.
He could, he could have if he. I think if he had his way.
So Paul McCartney, self-taught. And then the one thing is, as the band, the Beatles, all of a sudden they're bigger than Jesus, as John Lennon said. Yeah, go ahead.
I know it's funny. John Lennon was saying he's when Dana Carvey was doing that joke about Paul talking to John in heaven.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey John, remember when we used to say that we were bigger than Jesus?
Yeah.
Kanye West thinks he is Jesus."
Well, you know what? Sadly, that's true.
Yes.
And a lot of people got upset with that when he said he didn't mean that. Of course, he said it off the cuff, but back in the day, despite the fact that we didn't have social media, there was a press, and that caused an uproar.
Well, of course, they took it more seriously here in America than they did over in England.
Did they really?
I think when it comes to that stuff, Ricky Gervais.
That's true. That because they were more Protestant, so they didn't give a shit about Jesus as much as we did. No,
Right.
just kidding.
Right, Ricky Gervais. One year when he hosted the Golden Globes,
Yeah.
he said, "I have to thank God for making me an atheist."
Yeah.
and of course over here we take that very seriously. And churches here is like a sermon for Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. I mean, obviously, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's of course Gervais. And was that the same time when he just said, "Just take your award"? Was that the last time he did it? He hasn't been invited since. Of course, there's no host to these shows anymore.
No. It's just.
But he is a perfect example of what you just talked about, how forward British people are.
No.
And of course, when they have that accent, they could be the dumbest people in the world. They could be illiterate. They still sound a lot more intelligent than us.
They do. They sound colorful.
They really do. When they talk to someone in Liverpool, it's like who probably has a third grade education, he still has that little edge to him.
I
Well,
know.
the whole thing is. I was like, oh, okay, I'll take your word for it. I have no idea what you just said, but boy, you're a smart guy.
You ever seen Dana Carvey in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? He did that when he's pretending to be Ferris Bueller's dad.
Yeah.
He's like, "You, sir, are an asshole."
Yeah. Dana Carvey, again, very talented guy. I'm just shocked that his career didn't really take off for some reason.
And no, I think he's a talented guy. I think
Very talented. I think sometimes he gets a little bit overboard when he's being interviewed. He's become the new Robin Williams, if you will. He's the
Yes.
guy that can't sit down. Marty, as they refer to as Marty Short, who crosses his legs and thinks he's Bob Hope and so forth. I could never get that. All right, so I'm reading this. You're going to have to explain this. Co-written 32 songs that have topped the Billboard. Okay, so what's that mean? He co-wrote songs for other people that topped the Billboard, or is that himself? Because I know he has a lot more than 32.
I think these are songs I think he wrote when he was with Beatles,
Okay.
with the Wings. I'm not aware of any. I'm sure he's written songs for other people.
I don't know. That's interesting because you get guys like Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees. He
Yes.
wrote so many songs, obviously from himself and his brothers, but he wrote a ton of other songs
Yes.
out there as well. But Paul McCartney, again, just that the quintessential. Would you say you can't call him a rock star, although he is? But he is. I mean, we always referred to Michael Jackson as the king of pop. You got to give that nomination to Paul McCartney, right?
Oh, yeah, because he's hands down one of the greatest musicians of all time.
Because he led the Beatles to be the Beatles along with John, Ringo, George. We get that, and then he has his career with the Wings. Honestly, the music from Paul McCartney and Wings, Band on the Run and whatnot, and Wings Over America, double album set. I think it was recorded in Seattle, Washington, whatever, or maybe in multiple cities. But that album, it was double album, of course, this is before your time, was the most popular album from the early 70s. And that says a lot right there.
Yes.
But it was a tremendous, tremendous album. And it was maybe towards the mid to late 70s, now that I'm thinking about it. But it captured who Paul McCartney was. His second career as a band leader, and his music just evolved just tremendously.
It is, and he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice.
Yeah.
Once as a member of the Beatles in 1988, and again when he was as a solo artist in 1999.
So if there is as we always use the iconic reference, Mount Rushmore of rock music or pop culture, Paul McCartney's got to be there,
Yes,
right?
I think he's gonna be the first one.
He's the George Washington.
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, I'm not going to hold you to this, but name three others. Do you put Michael Jackson up there? You got to put Mick Jagger up there.
Mick Jagger. I would put Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Michael Jackson did have a shorter window, though. His career did dwindle in the 2000s because he just wasn't coming up with stuff because of his drug issue.
But he's still,
yeah. It became much odder after the 90s. Okay, so real quick, two more.
Stevie Nicks.
You're a big Stevie Nicks fan, I tell you.
I do.
I'm glad that you're putting in a female up there. That
like
makes
her
a lot
voice.
I would put Carly Simon over Stevie Nicks only because again they're comparable. Yeah, go ahead. Who would be the fourth?
Linda Ronstadt? Maybe?
Wow, listen to you. Jeepers creepers. Okay. I was thinking more or less on the lines of David Bowie or someone like that. Someone would throw Tyler up there. It's always a debate. No one can come up. But at the end of any given friggin' day, 9 out of 9.5 people are going to include Paul McCartney in that. Listen, if they don't know what they're talking about.
No, they don't. The taste of music is in their ass.
So as of 2009, he had sales of 25.5. What does it say?
Million record sales.
Record sales, which obviously equates to a lot more than 25.5 million in the U.S.
Yes.
I would think that he would sell more than that, to tell you the truth. That's a big number. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I would think it would be 100 million.
Yeah, I would thought it'd be more than that. But
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah, it just. No, sorry, what were you going to say?
So, but at that point, you mentioned this earlier, he was inducted in the Hall of Fame twice for the Beatles and as a solo artist. How many other people have gotten that nomination?
Not very many.
No, I'm sure they haven't. 18 Grammy Awards.
Yes.
It should, again, that's shocking. I thought he had more.
I know, he should get more.
Because it's just the type of guy, he is the benchmark for greatness.
Yes, he is.
And he's a good guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, he is the musician. Mm-hmm. He is the ultimate musician.
Well, okay, so the latter, this is what I was saying earlier. They started having fights. Mm-hmm. They blamed it on Yoko. To some degree, maybe Linda was involved with all that stuff too. Who knows? But the boys will be boys. And so, then they have film of them coming up with Lonely Hearts Club Band or whatever album they were working on a song. And Paul was taking charge. And George didn't like that. So, George Harrison would be playing part of a song in the studio, and Paul would say, no, I want you to do this. And then you could see that there was friction there. So was Paul getting in his own way because of his perfectionism?
I think there was tired of all the adulation of touring, being in a band, all the fans. I think eventually all bands, with the exception with the Rolling Stones, reach a point where they're tired of touring, they're tired of being around one another, they want to break apart, do their own thing.
Right.
But getting back to the Rolling Stones, they're the only band I know of that have stayed together for over 50 years.
Right. And some member changes and so forth. What's his face wasn't on there. Woods wasn't on there all the time, and of course they lost their lead guy, Brian Jones. Now there's suggestion that might have been a murder from that incident in London back in the day when he was found dead in the pool.
Jeez.
But again, a lot of these guys, as you've seen, Tom Petty. And other pop stars, even George Michaels, who was, not a rock star, but certainly a pop culture guy. He had everything. He had looks. He had the hair. He had the voice. He dies, I think, at 50 years old, or so. He's in his early 50s. So we're seeing a lot of those people that lived very, very largely, if you will, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and 90s for that matter, who were dying in their early 60s. Paul McCartney evaded that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he didn't get into that drug culture.
No, I think, and also Tina Turner.
Yeah,
she made it into. She's in her early 80s.
Right.
And she's she was the queen of rock and roll.
Yeah, she really was.
She taught Mick Jagger how to dance. She had them legs, and she's even in her early 80s. She's still got those legs.
Yeah, I hear she's in poor health in recent years, but God bless her for getting to 80.
Yes,
because at the end of the day, here's one thing that can be said about rock stars. It takes your life. It takes a toll on your life.
It does, because you're putting your heart and soul into something, like into a song.
Yeah, but you're also putting your heart and soul into partying too.
Yeah, I guess it's just a side effect.
Well, I mean, again, fame. With fame comes, fame and fortune means that you're going to be popular.
Yes.
You don't have to be necessarily good looking. I mean, if you saw any pictures of the Ramones, these kids weren't that good looking, but they were popular and people loved them, particularly women.
I know Eddie Murphy was saying in his 1983 stand-up delivery something about singers. You have to look good because Mick Jagger's the ugly.
Yeah. See, I disagree. I look at a picture of Mick Jagger when he was young, and obviously he's aged and so forth, and the sun caught up to him. Just like even Robert Redford looks like a road map. Yeah. But I always thought he was a good-looking guy. I don't know. I guess it was just his face and how he just opened up his mouth and so forth.
He had big lips too.
Big lips, and it's just like big eyes, the way he spoke. Anyway, so you're right. And there's another guy. But at saying all this, Keith Richards is yet still alive. So how's that possible?
All the drugs in the world.
Not to mention he smoked ashes from his dead father and rolled it into a joint. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, 1967, spent 27 weeks at the #1 in the record retailer chart in the United Kingdom, 15 weeks on the Billboard top charts. And again, I appreciate the album, just like we were talking about Yellow Submarine and whatnot.
Yes.
The theme albums I didn't get into as much as the early stuff, like Rubber Soul and whatnot, but still great stuff. And no surprise that it stayed on the top of the charts. But here's the main thing to extract from this: when you're at the top of the charts, and the charts were relatively new, obviously back in the day. Today they're all over the place. But to remain 27 weeks at the top of the charts at that era, that's incredible in itself.
It is. I remember when I did history of rock and roll in college. I listened to Norwegian Wood. I love the sitar in that. I love because when they traveled to India, that's where they got the idea from.
Yeah, and that's when they got into transcendental. What is it they call it? Meditation.
Yes.
From the who was the guy? Who was their inspiration?
Maharaji. Yeah.
And that changed their lives. I know Paul got into it. All of them. Of course, George Harrison really got into it because that reflected in his music.
Yes.
And George Harrison, a good solo career, by the way.
He did.
Better than Ringo's, but Ringo had a decent career too.
He did. A great career. Died tragically at 58 from cancer.
Yeah. And not to mention, he got robbed at gunpoint. And I think he actually faced the person who got into his compound. That was shortly before he died. So anyway, a great life. I mean, if you're living the life of a Beatle, but real quick, do you know anything about Pete Best, the fifth Beatle that was kicked out and replaced, and Ringo replaced him?
I've heard of Pete Best. I remember when they were interviewing Paul and Ringo on the CBS morning show, Sunday morning show. Yeah, they were talking about Pete Best, how John took his place.
Well, I thought it was Ringo.
Ringo took.
Yeah, right.
But I've heard of Pete Best. I don't know much about him, but I know that he lost to Ringo took a spot because I guess he had something. Ringo had something that Pete didn't.
I saw the adaptation, and they did a couple of them. They did one for TV back in the 80s. It was very well done, but they were talking about the origins of the Beatles, and of course that came up. But basically, he says he's not one of us.
No.
And when you look at the chemistry, particularly in the movies, Ringo did really fit in there. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But they said he wasn't the greatest drummer in the world either. And in some cases, again, we talked about it earlier, Paul actually did the drums in some of the albums later on because he didn't like the way Ringo did them, apparently. But and I wonder, does Paul and Ringo, do they talk to one another at all?
Yeah, I've seen them together in interviews. I remember they were talking about how they went to did a show in Jacksonville, Florida, as the Orange Grove Stadium.
Yeah.
There, and it was still segregated at that time, and we're talking about how this, and they're like, and Paul was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean segregated?
Yeah, what's that all about?
Because there was none of that going on in England. Slavery had been outlawed in England like 100 years before the Civil War happened here in America, but. Yeah, they were like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, because they're on one side you have like a white audience, and the other side you have a black audience. I'm like,
volunteered audience, they didn't instruct it that way, obviously, or dictate it.
Right, but they're used to performing in places where people are all together. There's no one side there's this and one side there's that. Everyone's mixed together.
Huh? It's like a high school cafeteria.
It's just like
the geeks sit over here.
The cool kids sit over here, and like the in between sit right here.
Right. Everybody. That's where I sat, and I loved it. By the way, we talked about sports, we talked about movies. We were the geeks, and we were the most fun, to be quite honest. And I truly mean that. So married 3 times. Okay, here's the thing. Linda Eastman, was that his first wife?
Yes.
So he had that girlfriend. What was her name? The girlfriend.
Jane Asher.
What went wrong there? Was she didn't? He wasn't enough for her, or what happened there? I want someone more famous.
Yeah. Jeez. I know Paul McCartney. I guess maybe he just.
Maybe it was his choice.
Linda had something that Jane didn't.
Right. Jane was very pretty. Linda, of course, was knocked for her looks. I thought she was very pretty, very natural looking. But again, people got mean about that. I think particularly the Brits, doesn't surprise me, although the women didn't like the fact that he married an American.
Girl,
who knows? All right, so married 3 times. Heather Mills was the one with one leg. Is that correct? Or was that then his next wife? But I know he married someone with one leg, and it didn't work out. It was a horrible, horrible divorce.
Yeah, I think it was Heather Mills because.
Yeah, she lost her leg, I believe, in a motorcycle accident. Yeah. And here it is, the king of all rock, pop, so forth, and he falls in love with a one-legged woman. She was British too, right? I believe
Heather Mills.
Yeah. So here's she's quoted as saying something like he was unresponsive to her one night when he wouldn't allow her. He said use the bathroom and don't use the bedpan because she had one leg. Using a bedpan was more convenient if she had to go in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. He didn't like that, and she brought that up in an interview. So she brought up an ugly side to the relationship that you and I or anyone shouldn't know anything about. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad that she took him for a lot of money. But that said, that's what happens when you don't have that's the type of guy he is. I don't think he had a prenup with that. No, here's the guy. Everyone in his side would say you have to have a prenup. He said, "No, I don't want that."
Well, because that to him says that the marriage is not going to work out.
Right, exactly. So he's such a good guy.
He is,
and it cost him.
it does. But like getting back to saying that he was such a sensitive soul, it's like he just. Like he wants, he deeply mourns his wife Linda's because 29 years, 4 kids, a band,
and he was happy,
a life.
He loved her.
I know, and then to lose her tragically to cancer.
Right. And he loved again. So here it is. He marries her because she's humble, despite the fact that she comes from wealth, money, and so forth. Yes. She could do whatever she wants. Mm-hmm. And she's not the greatest looking. She doesn't have the skill that not that matters, and it should matter, and it doesn't matter. But she wasn't part of the rest of the world that was enamored with him and his fame. Yeah. So that's why Tony Randall, his wife, he said the same thing. She could care less what he did on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. She didn't know what she was doing or what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of celebrities out there who have relationships like that. I think it's very healthy, Chris. Don't you?
Yeah. Not be too involved. She didn't really care what he did.
Right.
Yeah. It's just sometimes I think even like when in marriages, like sometimes you gotta let your spouse do their own thing once in a while.
Right. And particularly in the pop field or celebrity world or Hollywood world or music, because after a while you just get tired of it. I mean, it's almost like working with your wife essentially, or your husband for that matter. It's just way too much of it. So it's a good balance. And again, coming from Paul McCartney doesn't surprise me.
It's like I'm not too worried about like his personal. It's like you get divorced, take care of business. Now go write music and sing songs. I'm like this, like when the whole thing with Tiger Woods went down. Yeah. I said it's like get your face fixed, take care of business, go play golf. I'm like this, just go play golf. I don't care. Right. You cheat on your wife, you got to apologize to your wife. Either she stays or she goes. You got to live with it.
Yeah. Right.
You made that choice. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Boy, that sounded like a comic routine right there. That was pretty good, Chris.
Well, Sinbad came like because when he was on did episode George Lopez in 2010.
Yeah,
he's like George. He was asking about Tiger, and Sinbad was like, George, you're a golfer. I'm not. Tiger Woods only has to apologize to his wife.
Right.
I think it's drawn out. I think it's too much. Mm-hmm. It's too much. If you went through this audience right now, most men here have messed up. They're stupid like that.
Right.
Maybe not 13.
Yeah, right.
You're not a porn star.
Yeah, right. Well, he really went for the gusto there, though.
But it's a dream.
Yeah.
Because what happens was that they wanted his face. They wanted him to break down and cry. Yeah. I don't want him to lose his swagger. I'm like this. Your wife already know she clubbed him. We know she clubbed him.
Yeah. Well, she clubbed his car with a 5-iron.
He didn't fall asleep in the car. He didn't crash in the trees. She got him.
Yeah.
That's why he got his face fixed.
Beautiful woman, by the way.
I know.
Just tremendous. But you're right. I mean, it's just here's the thing with Tiger. I mean, again, he was a geek. He had skinny kid, awkward looking. Mm-hmm. He admitted that. Had braces, and he was a budding star. There's video of him on the Mike Douglas show from the early '80s, late '70s. Mm-hmm. He was only 5 years old, and they knew that he was going to play golf. Yeah. So there was some celebrity too, but at the same time, he was still that skinny kid that girls didn't find attractive. And then next thing you know, he bulks up, good-looking guy, 6'1", greatest golfer arguably of all time. He's not anymore, of course. And so now all of a sudden he's getting a lot of attention that he didn't get. And I could see that happening. There's no doubt about it. Paul McCartney couldn't buy a date. Now check that. Mick Jagger couldn't buy a date, or attract women. Then he becomes a rock star and everyone flocks to him. So sometimes, it's like the floodgates are open, but that temptation, you got to walk away from that. But Tiger Woods couldn't do that.
No.
Did you say 13 different women? Was that the number you threw out?
He did. And Sinbad did it at a show he did at Orange County. He's like, I'm in my 30s, I got $1 billion, I'm going to get married?
Yeah, right, exactly. And I still have this urge to be liked, and also I have a sexual appetite for people that do porn. Not the time to get married to a beautiful Swedish girl, whatever she was, or is.
She was a nanny.
She was the nanny, too. She was a nanny, but somehow he met her.
Yeah.
And I've seen pictures of her, nude, so forth. She's unbelievable. Paul McCartney fathered 4 children. That's Heather, Mary, Stella, and James.
Yes.
So that's how many girls? That's 3 girls and 1 boy. Are any of them in music at all, or do we know of?
Yes. Stella's the only one who isn't. She's in fashion.
Okay.
Yeah, they interviewed her in, I think it was...
How old are they? They must be in their
40s.
In their 40s.
Late 40s.
Sure.
And they were interviewing her, and she was talking about her mom helped her with some of her fashion ideas.
Yeah, sure.
And it was cool, like watching that. She there's this actress I have a crush on, and she ended up closing. Diana Silvers is her name, and she ended up closing Stella McCartney's fashion show.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's sharp. But none of them got into. None of them have the ability to get out there and sing like Paul or Desire or whatever. Not that that's to happen or be expected.
His only son is a musician. I know that, and I know his 2 others are musicians. Well, another one's a musician. The other one, I think, does some sort of business.
Because as we know, John Lennon had 2 sons that I know of, and Julian was just a tremendous performer when he sang those songs in the 80s. But it's much too late. And then, of course, he's looking into the doorway, and there's a silhouette of a man dancing, and that's supposed to apparently represent his father. But we don't hear about Julian anymore. We never did after that.
No, it's like he kind of like faded away.
Yeah, and he was so talented. He had the John Lennon look. And of course, his other son with Yoko just didn't. I guess he got Yoko's talent. I'm sure he's a good kid. Blah blah blah. Not everyone's supposed to be born a ball player because you're Hank Aaron's son. I get that. And there's a lot of pressure on Tiger Woods' son to be the next Tiger Woods one day. That hasn't happened yet. So I don't like suggesting that just because you're the son or daughter to a famous person, you have. But it is a good question to know because Paul McCartney had good genes.
He did. And getting back to John, he and Yoko wrote a song when their son was born called "Beautiful Boy."
Yeah,
and I've heard it on the radio too. It's good. It's a cute song.
If I'm not mistaken, it was from his last album that he did in 1980, and that was the one he was promoting. And he was recording another album the day he was killed.
I'm surprised when he did get killed that the British didn't invade us again for doing that.
Well, I mean,
for him getting killed by one of ours on our soil.
It's true. And again, the Brits, obviously Canada's are I guess our best friends in the whole world. But when it comes right down to it, we are the Brits. We're British. They're the 51st state essentially. Actually, let me take that back. Out of 51 states, they're the first state. And I know we're a conglomeration of a lot of other things, don't get me wrong, but we speak their language, we look like them, we act like them in many ways, we love our cultures, we share the same, we love their queen and their whole, monarchy and so forth. So you're right, they would have every right. So if you lousy Americans, you allowed that asshole, and again, we look into what Chapman did and how we got the bullets from Atlanta. He went, it was just you would think if someone's that crazy, they're just going to buy a gun and shoot someone. He actually got special bullets that would implode inside the body. So when John Lennon was shot from behind, by the way, walking into the Dakota, he was shot in several times, but one got a main artery in his shoulder, and because the bullet explodes in the body, it just tore up his whole body, and it was no chance for him.
Reminds me of like when Reagan got shot in '81.
Yeah, a year later.
Yeah, he got shot.
Well, not even a couple months later. Yeah, it was in March.
Yeah, he got shot and it hit like a major artery.
Yeah,
and he had been in his he was in his early, like 70 at that time.
The bullet deflected though; it went off the car.
Yeah, he's lucky.
Yeah, very lucky. Yeah, and that was Hinckley, a guy who kind of looked like Chapman. If you put the two together, they kind of looked similar. And of course, that same year in 1981, the Pope was shot.
Yeah,
and then
I know.
The same year was Anwar Sadat, the then president of Egypt. He was killed by his own people in a parade.
How you call shooting the Pope? It's like I want to go to hell, but I don't want to wait in no lines or nothing.
Yeah, he was a Muslim, and he went to the Vatican and he shot him from standing there in what do they call that? The area, of course. And at that point he was exposed. Since then, the Pope has been in an enclosure, not entirely. The new guy is. He's kind of liberal with all those things, but and the Pope forgave him. By the way,
I know it's like
he actually went face to face with him and forgave him for what he did.
I know and forgave him. It's like, and Jim Gaffigan, who's another famous comedian, he's like
liberal.
He's like you said, if the two of them live together, it's like Pope, it's your turn to do the dishes. Didn't you try to shoot me the other day?
Yeah. That would be something Gaffigan would do. He's a funny guy.
He is. I like him.
And he's on CBS. You probably see him on CBS
Sunday
this morning.
Yes.
Yeah, he does those features. So Paul McCartney, what is he doing today?
Today, I haven't heard too much. I'm sure he's writing some kind of new song or writing songs for people.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't hear too much. He keeps he's kept a low profile and during recent years. Not too much buzz going around. Just sort of a quiet guy.
Well, you say that, and kind of COVID has been the reason why we haven't seen a lot of people. But and this is where I think guys, as they get older, especially an iconic person like Paul McCartney, sometimes they say, okay, I'm getting older. So now he's going to be doing more interviews with Jimmy Fallon. Yes. He goes on that other show, the car karaoke guy. What's his name?
James Corbin.
Yeah. So and then he does other things where all of a sudden the tour people will be doing a tour of the NBC building. Well, it used to be the RCA building, whatever. And then he'd be on an elevator, or they would open up the elevator, and sure enough, Paul McCartney would be there with Jimmy Fallon as a surprise. I think that's a bit too much, in my opinion. That's Paul McCartney, for crying out loud.
I know. It's like
save that for another life.
Yeah,
will you?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's for a B actor that no one gives a shit about, not Paul McCartney. And I could just imagine being in an elevator and the doors open and Paul McCartney's in the same.
Oh God.
He does have investments here in America, and I don't know if he still has holdings in a trucking company in Rochester. But my brother-in-law met him.
Yes. Yeah, really?
Yeah, he met him because he, again, these guys are investors too. I mean, they're not just music and,
I'm sure
they have real estate and holdings and so forth. His estate must be huge, his portfolio. So, and I believe since then they have since sold the company. But no, Paul McCartney was here, and it was fascinating to see that.
I know, it's like coming to Little Hamlin, like upstate New York.
Yeah, right.
That have someone that famous to be up here. Yeah, I'm sure, because I'm sure, like, on top of all his music, the sales from his music and everything else, I'm sure he's made investments that added onto it, his fortune.
Did Linda have anything to do with Eastman Kodak, the Eastman family from the Kodak family?
My parents asked me that the other night.
Yeah.
No, I looked it up. There was nothing that said that
just because Eastman was her last name. And
it was her last name, but her mom's family did own a clothing company in Cleveland.
Yeah, but of course she was a photographer, so maybe that's why I got that connection. Well, anyway, so the greatest Beatle of all time. Can we say Paul McCartney? Can we say that after that would certainly be John Lennon? And again, no disrespect, because he died at a young age. He was only 40 years old when he died on December 8th, 1980.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it because I was in senior year high school. And although I wasn't a musician, I had musician friends, Ray Balcones and another guy by the name of Richie Bohack, good friends. Both musicians, and I'll never forget them. They dressed, one dressed in complete black the next day, which obviously was December 9th, which was a Tuesday, because he died on a Monday night. Everyone was watching Monday Night Football, and I was doing homework. And I'll never forget it, because these are the things you remember. You remember 9/11, where you were, so forth. A lot of people remember where they were when John Kennedy was killed. So I looked over, and Ray Balcones was on one side of the cafeteria, and Richie Bohack was coming, and they both came and they met each other in the middle, and they hugged each other. Now again, these are seniors. We weren't that affectionate to it. The high school kids are, but that was a golden moment that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was a horrible, horrible thing what happened there.
It was, and also like Freddie Mercury.
Yeah,
when he did that AIDS concert, like he was dying. But at that time, like in that moment, he was able to bring people together with him and the rest and his other bandmates were to bring other people together via their music. Everyone was together. Everyone just forgot their differences in that moment and just was joining in harmony. And he just commanded the audience.
Yeah. Right. Again, another humble guy.
He died tragically at 40.
By the way, if you ever get a chance, anyone listening right now, please do yourself a favor. First of all, do not see the movie Bohemian Rhapsody if you haven't seen it yet. It's a complete waste of time. If you read up on that movie, they had so many problems producing it. They couldn't find the right director. The editing. If you suffer from epilepsy, don't watch that movie because it's like watching a Wang Chung video. You will be disturbed by it. But there is a 2-hour documentary on the Reels Network. That's REELZ. I talk about this a lot, but it's a 2-hour. It's called The Great Pretender, and of course, that was one of his songs that he wrote, Freddie Mercury. And the guy that they have, it's a docudrama, so it's not. They're playing it out as if it's a movie, but they all have some narrative. They have pictures of him as a child, whichever. So the whole thing carries him right up into the early 90s when he dies of AIDS and how the world finds out, how the press exposes it and so forth. His AIDS test came out positive. He was coming back from Japan. Here's my point. The guy they got to play Freddie Mercury was Freddie Mercury. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. I'm not talking about Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't know who that guy is. I don't think that guy was even close. And I know he performed well. But the guy in the docudrama was very good. So The Great Pretender, if you get a chance to see that, it's not in the movies. You can't get it on Netflix, but you will see that. It was just tremendous. So what is it about British people? Why are they so much better at this than we are? I mean, we have the Beach Boys, we have Aerosmith, we have scores of others. But let's face it, Britain's not a very big country, a lot smaller than us. They are the king and queen, for that matter, of rock and roll, in my opinion.
Yes, they've like the 70s were called, like the 60s and 70s were called the British Invasion.
Yeah, sure, for good reason.
I don't know. I think something about the Europeans, like in the way how they do the arts. It's something about their minds. I'll never understand it. What it is that makes them like better than us.
Yeah, they're better actors. And again, the strong influence, the British influence in Canada, it just demonstrates why Canada is no bigger than the state of New York in terms of population. It's a little bit bigger, but still, that's a big country. It's the second biggest country in the world.
It is, and also some other.
And they have so many actors that in Hollywood from Canada.
I know Dan Aykroyd, Sir Christopher Plummer.
Yeah. The kid up Grisland, what's his name, from Cornwall? He was in La La Land. What's his name?
Ryan Gosling.
He's from Cornwall.
Yes.
But there's scores and scores of others from Canada, not to mention great bands like the Guess Who and there's many others. So are they just better at this than we are? Or are they more enamored? Are Canadians more enamored? They see British TV and they love the Hollywood culture. Does that give them more motivation to be better actors than we are? It seems like that's the case.
I think it gives them. I think seeing Europeans gives them like to do something different, something better.
Right.
It teaches them to do something better, and then bring that talent to Hollywood to make them stand out more easily.
Yeah. And again, I just think they're really, really good at it. So anyway, British people, God bless you for being who you are. But most importantly, God bless the fact that the Beatles came out when they did, months after John F. Kennedy was killed in November of 1963. Just 2-3 months later, February of 1964. They're on the Ed Sullivan Show. That's what America truly, truly needed at that point. And that's what your parents talk about. Now, your parents were too young to remember that time, because I know they were my age and so forth. But that was the benchmark for so many people getting out of the doldrums of the loss of JFK just months earlier. So that changed a lot of things. The world was changing. We knew that. Vietnam was just festering and so forth.
Yes.
But the breath of fresh air was clearly the Beatles. That's what everybody needed at that point.
Yes, everyone needed the Beatles at that point because and we were mourning the loss of a president. You know,
right.
I remember my grandma told me a story of how when they learned of JFK's assassination.
A lot of people were in school.
Yeah, my aunt were crying.
Yeah, sure.
And my grandfather was just cussing up a storm.
Right.
And my mom was only 2 years old when that happened.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, and also like poor Walter Cronkite, who I think is a model journalist.
The Paul McCartney of Anchorman.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
He'd seen.
And that's the way it is.
Taking his glasses off, trying to choke back tears. Trying to
looking at the clock.
And also JFK's funeral, like seeing Jackie hold John Jr.
And John Jr. saluting his dad.
Dad's casket. 3 years old, he was.
And then tragically, in 1999, he decides to become a pilot, and he flies into the night without his autopilot and with his beautiful wife and his sister-in-law.
One of his sister-in-laws.
And they're going to his cousin's wedding in Hyannisport, whichever. And we all know what happens then.
And poor his aunt Lee Radziwill. That late 80s and 90s were tragic years for her, because in 85 she lost her sister Janet, in 89 she lost her mom, and then in 94 Jackie died.
Yeah.
In 99 her nephew JFK died, and then 3 weeks later her son died of cancer.
Right. And you know what? And a lot of other tragedy. Obviously, we're not even mentioning RFK in '68, and then his son had bone cancer, and another one died in a skiing accident.
Yeah.
But he was banging his
babysitter.
His babysitter, whatever the deal was. Jeez. He was also accused of other improprieties. Yes. But no one deserves to die, especially in a skiing accident. But here's the thing: they referred to that as the curse of the Kennedys, because Joe Kennedy allegedly sold his soul to the devil to be the millionaire that he ultimately became. But a lot of people referred to him as a snake oil salesman, and that he had something coming to him.
He was not a good man.
For the most part, no. Not to mention what he did with his daughter by giving her a lobotomy because she was challenged, and he thought that was the answer. One of the worst stories ever. There's no doubt about it. History through the eyes of a millennial. Today we talked at length. And you know what? We didn't get off the beaten path. We really focused on one person today. And if there's going to be one person you don't want to get off the beaten path with,
is Paul McCartney.
Is Paul McCartney.
I should also mention my mom has a book called 8 Days a Week.
Yeah.
And it contains photos and interviews from the Beatles' last world tour.
Nice.
And I looked into it. It's amazing. I would share this with anyone who's a bit much of a Beatles fan as I am, but yeah, it's cool. You see,
what is it? A book?
It's a big like not autobiography, but it contains pictures and like little interviews,
like something you see on a coffee table about Paul McCartney.
Yeah, like a coffee table type.
That's what I like. That keeps your mind occupied.
Yes,
you read quite a bit if there's text in there, and you look at the pictures that bring back a lot of memories, particularly for people from that era. A great time. Music will live forever. That's why we have all these stations.
Yes.
All these stations.
That's why they had their own station, the Beatles.
Eventually, all these stations, especially golden oldies, there's a difference, obviously, but it will get to the point eventually.
Yes.
When we won't have anything other than just a 60s station, 50s. 50s is a different dynamic. 70s, 80s is their own thing. But then we start getting really weak in the 90s and this. So the best music is behind us, in my opinion. And thank God for the Beatles. Thank God for Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Harrison, and Ringo Starr, the Rolling Stones, and many other people that made your mom's life, your parents, your grandparents, my life. Even despite the fact that I was a young kid, I was highly influenced by it because my sisters were older than I was, and I remember them playing them on the record players. I'll never forget that. Chris, thanks once again for coming in to do your own show, History Through the Eyes of a Millennial with Chris Pacifici.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
And we're here, and of course, hopefully you're watching this on some social media posts. Right here, this is all produced at the H2O Studios, high above Public Square in Watertown, New York. You have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Take care.